In the background of the Black Ops 6 zombie story, there's been something brewing, something sinister. Because while we were all distracted with our crew, Richtofen, the Sam AI, the Sentinel artifact, there's been something in the Dark Ether that's been watching over all of this, planning and scheming for something that we just don't know. But with DLC for Janus Towers, this being may finally make their presence known. And if you guys think that is intriguing, I'd appreciate if you guys dropped a like and subscribe. But with that said, let's talk about this being. But what exactly am I talking about? I mean, I'm making it sound like it's super important, and if it was so important, then we would all know about it, right? Well, to really understand it, we have to look at a map that you don't normally think of too much in terms of story, but that's Liberty Falls. Because on this map, we met a character named Dr. Panos. He's someone who previously worked for Project Janus under Richtofen. And throughout the events of the Easter egg, we're helping this guy what we originally thought was stop the outbreak. But what was really happening is that he was trying to be freed from the Dark Ether that he was trapped in, and he used our strike team to swap places where they would now be trapped in the Dark Ether and he would be able to escape freely. But throughout this Easter egg, we learned that Panos isn't working alone, and instead he's talking to someone while he's in the Dark Ether, someone that's helping him plot and plan everything he's doing, from creating the device that frees him to what he's going to be doing after this. And the question is, who is that character? Who's in the Dark Ether talking to Panos, helping him do everything he's doing, and now even directing Panos on what he's going to be doing in Janus Towers? Which, by the way, we do know he's going to Janus Towers from radios on Shattered Vale. Well, luckily for us, we actually have a decent amount of hints of who this could possibly be talking to Panos. Like, there's a lot of indicators that exist that are very specific in some cases. But I think to go over these hints, we should start off with the broad ones. And the first one I want to talk about is obvious but important, is that whoever's talking to him is in the Dark Ether. They're not just someone in the regular world radioing him in, like they're in the Dark Ether. And more importantly, there's someone who has vast knowledge in the Dark Ether. In fact, in the recent radio in Shattered Vale, Panos says this person has a mastery of the Dark Ether. So this would imply that not only are they in the Dark Ether, but potentially they've been there long enough to master it. That's a kind of significance of this individual that we're talking about here. But beyond that, we also have some very interesting hints that are very specific and should give us hints on who this probably is. And the first one that I want to go over is when he mentions that this person who's talking to has gone to university, and they're talking about how they had different experiences compared to each other. And this is very significant because first things first, this confirms that this person was human at least at one point. It's not a Dark Ether entity that's always existed in the Dark Ether. There was someone who was in the human world and went to university. And this is not only great because not only does it confirm that it is a human person, but it also confirms that it's someone who went to university. And there's not that many people in the story that's like a confirmed thing. So this is definitely a really good hint. Another very interesting thing that Panos says, I want to read this quote word for word for you guys, is going to give us a really good idea of another part about this character. And what Panos says is, "No, I don't hate him. I don't think you do either. But if everything you told me is true, I should have never have taken the job." Now, first off, they're talking about someone they know in common, right? There's someone they're both talking about, but who is it? Well, I think it's obvious when that final thing, when he says, "I should have never taken the job." Because keep in mind what I said at the start of this video. Panos was a scientist working for Project Janus. And who runs Project Janus and hired Panos? That's none other than Richtofen. So it's clear to me that they're talking about Richtofen here. And that's significant because this means whoever he's talking to in the Dark Ether knows Richtofen also. So we're talking about a human who went to university that also knows Richtofen. These are layers that are going to help us try to theorize exactly who this could possibly be. And another hint we got recently in the Shattered Vale through a radio from Panos is something that's very significant because before in Liberty Falls, he never really refers to this person in any pronouns. It's very vague. But finally with this radio, he refers to this person in the Dark Ether as he, obviously implying that it is a man, right? And this would obviously eliminate any women characters that could possibly be in the Dark Ether also. And for the final like major hint that they gave us is a very, very mysterious one. And this is when Panos says, just because you're missing doesn't mean you're dead. So potentially, the person we could be looking for is someone that we may think is dead, but all this time has been alive. And I think that is a very, very interesting factor. And those are all the major hints they gave us, but we did hear kind of a little bit of motives of what this person wants, because one thing we hear in Liberty Falls is that Panos is going to help him find his friends. Now, who his friends are, we don't know. But in a recent radio, it kind of changed a little bit, and now it seems like whoever's in the Dark Ether is trying to have Panos build a new future, which is as vague as it comes. But with all these hints and factors that we can now level all into each other, we can now start theorizing on who potentially could fit all of these. But there is one huge caveat here, and we have to understand that even though we have all these hints, potentially some of these could just like not be true, like for reals. That's what they did in Cold War. The Forsaken constantly lied to whoever he was talking about, pretending to be different people. And we could have a similar situation here that some of these things just aren't true, which I know throws a wrench into all of this, but I still think it is something we keep in the back of our mind. But with that said, let's start talking about the possibilities of this character. Now, the first character, and who I used to actually begrudgingly think was the person talking to Panos, was Samantha Maxis. I mean, it makes sense. We said she's in the Dark Ether. Guess who was in the Dark Ether? At the end of Forsaken, she was trapped in the Dark Ether. And she also has some weird etherical powers, which is very interesting. And at this point, she's probably been in the Dark Ether for over 60 years, so she could have had a mastery of the Dark Ether. Also, the fact that she's been missing fits this also. She also went to university. This was confirmed in Cold War. And even the motives of looking for her friends, potentially Requiem, right? So the characters that we are playing as now, those were definitely her friends in Cold War, so it makes sense that she could be looking for them. And this is why I really used to believe it was her. I mean, a lot of this stuff was lining up, but at the same time, I just felt like something was off. And my main reason for this is because when he started talking about how they both knew Richtofen, and at what point did Samantha Maxis remember knowing Richtofen? Sure, he interrogated her in Cold War, but he was not showing himself to her. He was talking through a voice changer, in fact. And sure, they knew each other in the past when they came to this universe, but from our knowledge, we don't think either of them know each other. But maybe she was able to break through and remember the past. That could maybe explain it. But the worst and probably damning thing about this being Samantha is that recent radio, where Panos refers to the person who he's working with as he. And obviously, Samantha Maxis is a woman and would be referred to as she, obviously. So that's kind of an issue here. And that's what really makes it hurt the case that this could be Samantha Maxis, which I'm kind of relieved to hear. So if not Samantha, then who else? Well, another big candidate that I had for a while was Zykov. Now, if you guys don't know who Zykov is, he actually was in the Cold War story, and he turned out to actually be the Forsaken, which was a whole thing. So that was kind of interesting. But if we look at all the factors here, him having vast knowledge and even a mastery of the Dark Ether literally fits him better than anybody else, because he literally conquered the entire Dark Ether. Like, that is the Forsaken. He's obviously a he because he's Zykov, and then also he is familiar with Richtofen and has knowledge of him. But most importantly, he fits this idea of missing, right? Just because you're missing doesn't mean you're dead. But then we have the issues with him. When I think the biggest one is the fact that, is he even in the Dark Ether? Because last we all checked, he was stuck in that orb that ended up being the Sam AI orb. So if anything, he's in that, but maybe he's not in the Dark Ether and that's where he's communicating from in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's kind of a problem. And another thing is that he never went to any university. Zykov, before he went to the Dark Ether, was a mechanic, and I at least don't think you go to university to become a mechanic. That's more of a trade school thing, right? And those are the things that really hurt the argument for Zykov. But I mean, Zykov, as the Forsaken, did manipulate a lot of people, so it kind of would be in his kind of playbook to just lie about a bunch of things also. But there is one character that I think a lot of people are overlooking. And I'm not sure if I completely buy into it just yet, but he is an interesting candidate. And this is none other than Ulrich Vogel. Now, for the people who forgot about this guy, this is pretty much the guy who started this whole Dark Ether story. He was the lead scientist at End Station. And if you don't know what End Station was, that is where Die Maschine took place, where they built the cyclotron that made the first tear into the Dark Ether, where they were able to access it. Now, obviously, Vanguard showed that this was actually happening before this and all that, but this is like what kicked off the Dark Ether story in its beginning. And the thing is with him, he really does fit a lot of these things. First off, we don't really know he died. I mean, it was implied he died, but that's that thing. Just because you're missing doesn't mean you're dead. Also, the fact that he would have vast knowledge of the Dark Ether. I mean, he was the first scientist to get his hands on Ethereum. In fact, he called like Exo Element 1 before it was even called Ethereum. And if he found his way into the Dark Ether all the way during World War II, that would mean he's been in the Dark Ether longer than even Zykov, who became the Forsaken. If Zykov was able to have a mastery over the Dark Ether, maybe he could also. Also, this guy's literally a scientist, so obviously he's been to a university. And finally, he fits the he pronouns. All of this seems to be working so well for him. But my one issue with him is, why would Ulrich Vogel know about Richtofen and even consider the idea of hating him to have some sort of conflict with him? If he's been in the Dark Ether since World War II, that's even before Richtofen arrived in this universe. Richtofen didn't arrive till the 50s, so how would this have any connection to each other? And that's the biggest problem with him. When I initially thought of this idea, I really thought I was cooking with something here, but that is my biggest issue. And with that, this brings us to our final serious candidate. And this is just the possibility of it being a new character altogether, or in other words, the Shadowsmiths. Now, the Shadowsmiths are a very interesting entity because they were first introduced at the very end of the Modern Warfare story, and we just don't know anything about them. We literally only know their name is that they're very dangerous and very powerful. If it's even them, I don't know. Maybe it's just one person. Maybe this has ties into the Shadow Man or something like that. And if it is connected to the Shadow Man, or is it like the Shadow Man, I mean, he's probably going to lie like crazy too, so a lot of the stuff we went over here could just be a straight lie. Maybe he never went to university, maybe he never really knew Richtofen, but if it is a Shadow Man, then he definitely did know Richtofen, but that's an entirely different Richtofen compared to the one in this universe, so there's a whole lot of stuff to go over with that. But regardless, this has been the main theory for a lot of people for a while, that it's the Shadowsmith. And if it is, it's a very fascinating prospect because, like I said, we don't know much about them. And with the theories that it's potentially tied to the Shadow Man from the original story is a fascinating idea. Not to mention, people think that the Shadowsmiths might have something to do with the story that we're going to get in BO7 that's rumored to bring back the original crew. And maybe it is the Shadowsmiths, but it's just hard to confirm that right now because we just don't know enough about them. And with that, those are my 4 leading candidates for who this could be that Panos is talking to. But maybe it's someone else entirely and I'm missing something. If I want to just throw some funny ideas out there, I mean, there's a possibility that maybe it's Kraft. I doubt it. Like, I really don't think that'd be the case. But, I mean, there's also Klaus even. Like, that guy just went missing, right? At the end of Mauer. That would be crazy if it turned out to be Klaus. I doubt it. But, like, there's that thing too. But regardless, those are all my thoughts on this situation. But I'd love to hear your guys's. Who do you think this is talking to Panos in the Dark Ether? Is it someone I mentioned in this video, or is it someone I'm missing entirely? Let me know your theories and ideas down in the comment section below. Regardless though, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.